Okay, we're going to look at locks really quick on a video that is supposed to be short and will probably turn long shortly. I've got Indian Duck's box just set back in here. It's not bolted in at the moment. And I just set one of our Subaru seats down on top of it. And this is about the distance where it would ride. Right now it's actually all the way back on its runners where I would have it bolted to my box. In a normal driving situation, it actually sits right about there, about halfway through the distance of the runners. You know, that's kind of dependent on where you mount the seat. What I was thinking for padlock option, we'll look at that first. We'll slide the seat back, that would be as far back as it would go, is there would actually be a little hasp right there that the lock would go on. And the lock would not only be mostly covered up anytime that it was in use, but it would also leave this front plate right here open for mounting things like either a flashlight or a fire extinguisher or anything that anybody might want to put there. It kind of gives you a nice flat deck. So I was actually trying to leave that open for kind of future use if possible. Now, there's no problem with putting a hasp there. There's not a lot of height for it, though, so your lock would probably kick out. Your feet don't tend to really come back past where this rise is in the floor. In the original welded-in seat box, our box actually came 5 inches further forward to this, and to be perfectly honest, it was never a problem. But having one little thing sticking out like that, I feel like your heel would invariably find it, so it might become a bit of an annoyance. No problem with putting it there if you want. And that'd be kind of the heavy-duty option, either like that or like that. Kind of the lighter duty, lower profile, and when it comes to locking things, low profile is a pretty good option, is to actually just put a lock cylinder right here, just with a small key that would have a hook cam that would swing up and engage in the bottom of the lid. And the hook cam would make it so that it wasn't just like a little pawl that would be bent. It would actually have to break the metal to open. But the disadvantage of that is that it's only on one side of the lid, so the other side could flex, but honestly not much. Now another thing that could happen is that you could put a lock cylinder either in this surface or this surface to engage either the lid or the latch. This surface is difficult because there is that reinforcing rib right underneath it from the body, so punching down through that with a lock cylinder isn't really a good option. The other thing is you could put it there, but if you notice, that's as far back as our seat goes, so it'd be pretty awkward to get your key in there. That is besides the point, though, because there's two downfalls to doing that. The main one being all the dirt that would collect in the key, including disintegrating foam from the bottom of the seats. There's quite a lot of things that collect underneath there, and they'd invariably clog up your latch. More important than that, though, when the lid were open, now my seat's not bolted to this lid, so it'll kind of just slide back, but when your lid's open, you'd have a lock cylinder sticking down into where your most valuable crush space is, and that becomes an annoyance because if you have like a toolbox or something hard there, you wouldn't actually be able to push through it. If you have a lock cylinder over here on the side, when you're packing things into the box, you can actually kind of set things around it and make sure that you have all the clearance that you need. When it's hidden like that, you don't know whether it's going to work until you're trying to push the lid down into it, and that's kind of annoying. So really what I've narrowed it down to in kind of my process of elimination is that I either have a lock hasp that's on the front of this lid that sits down onto there, and you can put a padlock through it there if you want like the Super Duty lock version of your box, or we can just have the simple key right there that would swing up into the lid. That's kind of the best I've got for you right now. So we'll shut that off. Okay, now we're back inside and we're looking at the lid that we've been using in the truck. So this one's kind of been cut and welded a bunch of different times. And as a last note on the locking things situation, I wanted to point out in our situation, what we have is we have this center hatch access. So this is where the passenger side seat would go. And if you notice, when that latch bar comes through, it protrudes into the inside. Probably the most secure way to latch this is to actually have some form of locking hatch or center console that maybe you could hinge onto the back and that would hinge up to reveal a smuggler's hatch, something that would basically kind of not be noticed on casual inspection. And what you could simply do is where this bar comes through, you could either put a hole or a notch through it and put something as simple as a cotter pin over it. So let's say you've got locking access here, you could just reach in there and pin that, or you could have just a pin that goes through the wall here and into the lid frame as well, a separate pin. It wouldn't necessarily be a lock, but it would make it impossible to open it. Even if you could pull this out and you had a pin intersecting the body and the lid would be locked into place. If you had the bar all the way shoved through and you had that pinned, it wouldn't be able to come out at all. Can't really get much more secure than that, and it would be a really slick, low profile and hidden way to make sure that access to either your tools or what other things you might want to store underneath your seats was limited to basically only those that knew the trick for getting into it. A lot of times just having things out of sight and hidden and low profile is probably the best security that you're going to end up with. So, just one other thing that doesn't really apply in Indian Doc's case because he's got the flat deck covering access to it. But if you're going to have a hatch or a smuggler's hatch or any kind of access here, it could be a really nice way to secure the lids.